Master gave Dobby a bite of apple.
Tomorrow and the next day probably are something inside. And that thing
Dun, dun, dun.
is the subfloor.
Yes.
But if you got to do the subfloor. We have an angle grinder and a little wire brush bit attached to it, and we're gonna whip it up and kind of just brush all the current rust away, which isn't actually that much.
It's going to sound awful. I'm not excited. Hit record!
Okay, so we got that top layer of rust off. It's raining out and our boots are wet, and so we made kind of a huge mess doing so. And we pretty much just have rust like all over the floor now. So I've got the hose. I'm gonna just try and spray it out and clean it up a little bit. The next step on this subfloor project is to clean up every single hole on the floor, which is quite a lot. There's maybe like 200 or 300 of them.
By cleaning up, I mean removing the zinc coating that's on top of the sheet metal, which if left would prevent the weld from binding to the metal.
On the fumes. So it looks like whatever is underneath the bus is slightly flammable.
As amusing as that is, I definitely should be wearing a respiratory mask, as welding fumes are super gnarly and should not be breathed in. And speaking of protection, we wanted to put a layer of it under the bus in the form of an aluminum sheet to protect wires and elements that we didn't want to be affected by the falling sparks and molten metal. I am by no means an expert welder. I learned how to MIG weld for this project, so I'm putting a link up in the corner to a great video that taught me how to weld shut small holes just like these.
Howdy! We just etched the floors with vinegar.
Yep.
Poured it all over the floors. It's been soaking for a few hours. Now we're gonna hose it off, and then we're gonna give it a Rust-Oleum coat.
Oh, why, hello there.
Hello.
It works pretty well. Oh,
You are my Rust-Oleum girl.
this is our heater that we have in our space. And we brought it in here to warm the Rust-Oleum and keep it about 50 degrees as the can says.
Mmm.
It took quite a bit longer than we expected for this paint to dry because of how cold it is up here, even with the radiator in here at all times. I'm going to start scribing these corners to get the right shape to cut into the furring strips, and then we are going to start laying everything down for a dry fit. Let's do it. I'm going to make a cardboard template because it's a lot easier to work with. I just went ahead and did a rough tracing of it while it was up here like this. Cut it out with scissors. You can kind of just see which part is pushing up against the wall. Trim that off to get a closer and closer fit.
Before we can cut that curve, we need to rip our furring strips down to 1 inch tall so they are the exact same height as our foam insulation board.
This floor is like somewhat in. We are just doing a dry fit, so we know everything goes together well. And now we're gonna take some of this glue here and put it underneath the sleepers. We're gonna use, stop making fun of me. We're gonna use a different kind of glue for the foam boards, but
I use foam glue.
glue for the foam. So without further
Glue.
glue.
Without further ado.
Literally a hailstorm going on.
No!
The real test of our new skylights, huh?
Oh yeah.
So we got the first half done, but we ran out of the Vulcan glue that we're gluing down the struts with.
Which is fine because we also ran out of heavy things to hold it down.
It's quite an eclectic mix of random things that we found in my dad's shop. I don't know. I might leave it there.
It kind of looks nice. It's got a homey feel.
Day 2 of doing this floor insulation. I think we could probably just start gluing the next pieces
Yeah,
and then do things as we go.
Okay.
Look at what we've done.
I can't believe we've done this.
Another beautiful morning working on Indigo. The floor is glued. Looks very, very nice, huh? Now that that is all glued down, we're gonna go through all the seams with some aluminum tape. I believe it's meant for HVAC work. It should be good enough to keep that unwanted cold air from coming up through the cracks between the foam board and the wood struts.
After the insulation layer is all prepped, we can move on to the plywood, and what we used for this project was 3/4 inch tongue and groove. Since it'll take 5 sections of plywood to span the whole bus, the tongue and groove will help eliminate the thermal break between each sheet. That being said, we chopped off the tongue of the first board so we could fit it snug up against the back of the bus, and then we scribed and cut the same curve that we used on the struts into that piece, and it was ready to go.
Okay, so it's time to glue and screw these boards down. They're all chopped up, ready to go. Here's the hard part. Okay, that was enough. Hey, let's do the second board, huh?
Let's see how heavy these pieces of plywood really are.
It was quite a challenge to get each plywood sheet to nest into the next one, and we ended up using a wood block and hitting the front edge to get it to slide in. Because we weren't getting each sheet completely snug in its groove, our measurement for the last board ended up being about 3/16 of an inch too long.
Stop it. Can we jigsaw it right there?
Yeah, maybe. That was a hard one. It honestly totally works. It's a
We have a floor.
Yeah.
We have a floor.
We ran out of screws, so we're gonna do this last section later. But just a bunch of tools on a floor. Nothing else to see here but tools on a floor.
You.
What?
I thought you were calling me a tool.
Oh no, I was talking about these tools. See these? That's a tool, that's a tool, that's a tool, that's a tool. You're not a tool.
I'm a hammer.
Yeah.
Hey, it's me editing, and I just wanted to chime in and say that we forgot to record a certain part of this video, so I wanted to tell you about it. Let's go check it out. Okay, so we used 1-inch nails every 8 inches to connect the plywood to the sleepers, and we actually just glued underneath and didn't put any screws through the sheet metal on the bottom because we didn't want to put any new holes in the bus floor after just patching all of the old ones. That ended up being a big mistake because after we connected this plywood to the sleepers, the whole plywood piece kind of popped up all the way up the bus. And so there was a slight curve in every single one of the plywood pieces. We ended up having to do a big elaborate process of drilling a bigger hole and bolting the floor down so it would come down into level and then be able to screw through the floor with actual 2.5-inch screws or whatever. But I wish we had just done 2.5-inch screws every so often throughout the bus to hold it down while the glue was drying. Either way, I hope that helps you if you are doing the same kind of half-floating floor that we did. That is all that we have for this mammoth video. It was quite a task to get done, but thanks for sticking around to the end. We will see you on the next one. Wow, my surfboard can paddle for me. The jokes.